My name is Katie Mitchell. I'm a PhD candidate, registered physiotherapist, and certified athletic therapist. I am a full-time PhD clinician researcher. Been working on that for the past 4 years, and particularly focusing on concussion recovery and sort of more later stage assessments to determine return to sport activity in life. And that's more so pertaining to balance control, perception, and more so the integration of kind of all our clinical domains for more robust assessments. I also do some field work as well. Currently, I'm the lead therapist for Sledge Team Ontario. When we get back started anyways. So yeah, I've been on the sidelines, I've been in the clinic, and I've also been in the lab. And so I like to kind of have my hand a little bit in everything. And I really think that brings a unique perspective. I run my own practice called Thrive Neurosport Rehabilitation and Performance. And I sort of took what I did in my PhD research and sort of now been connecting it into my practice and utilizing like modern technology to really kind of anchor the core of that. I do sort of connect neuroscience with sports medicine more so for both concussion and orthopedic injuries, primarily like, connecting that for athletes as well, because even in an orthopedic scenario, a long time away from sport can affect some of those perceptual skills, particularly with surgical recovery, like ACL reconstructions. So yeah, it's been fun. I work inside of, I have a space inside of a gym, and so I have a full functional space to use. So I try to be as rigorous as possible with a lot of the athletes I work with, but also with a hybrid model, especially with NeuroTrackerX, as I'll get into, has really allowed me to sort of utilize my time more efficiently and be able to provide a service more so than spreading myself too thin. So that's been a really nice model for 2020. If you think of everyday life, we're preparing patients and sort of everyday people. So, just walking down the street or being in like a busy building, there's lots of different things going on that we have to understand. We have to be able to perceive all those variables. So a lot of it is attentions, like visual attention of seeing things in space, as well as kind of navigating and understanding where we are in space versus those things. In sport, it's a little more complex than that, as we think of sort of this more dynamic, constantly evolving environment where, there's high speed, there's potential for collisions. And so how I connect that with concussion in both ortho is utilizing like visual motor performance, perceptual motor, perceptual cognitive, all those other pieces bridge into rehab so that we're preparing people for these environments. So it's not just doing, 3 sets of 10 of doing, certain exercises, or maybe just standing on a Bosu for balance. I bring in a lot of specific cognitive components, as well as like rule-based drills and different things that involve reaction, but also a lot of that anticipatory feed-forward planning. Essentially like bridging together those pieces so that we're actually preparing people and seeing better transfer to real-life environments and sport environments. We work a lot on like the somatosensory components of gaining range of motion or gaining strength. But what do you have to do? This idea of kind of like differential learning and implicit learning strategies that prepare people for these more complex environments is do they know how to, quickly make a decision to change their route or their plan or something? If someone has a total knee replacement, for example, like, are we actually working on reactive control more so than just like a perturbation, more of a, like, if they have to decide to go a different way, like, do they feel confident on that knee? It is imperative for clinicians to understand how kind of perception to action works, not just in the sense of concussion injury, but with orthopedics, because as I mentioned, there's real life demands are more complex. They're never as simple as a sterile kind of clinical environment. If you're within your home, sure, it might be more controlled, but you're in a grocery store or a shopping mall, or like an airport or something where there's just like crowds to navigate, as I said, or just even out in this like a busy street. There's just a lot of different variables. We have a lot of different stimuli in our environments. We tend to do more than one thing at once. And so I always use kind of like my toddler nephews are like learning how to skate. And so you first learn how to skate and all your attention is focused on just skating. And then, you maybe put a stick in their hand and they have to suddenly skate with their stick. Then you have a puck. So now they have the stick handle and all of their attention is usually like focused in on just watching that puck. Their head is down. They're just trying to keep control or protect it. And so the difference between like a novice performer and an elite performer is the fact that their visual reserves for attention are much more available. And so that's where we can train people in rehab is to, can you do more than one thing at once? And like, can you, walk with your cell phone? That's another example. So the visual capacity to like perceive your environment still while you're doing a secondary task. That's kind of the dual tasking paradigms. But that's sort of the idea with hockey is an elite player will be able to see the ice, make decisions, perceive all these different variables. And then the stick handling is kind of redundant, right? They don't have to focus much attention on that. So that like piece of the pie is much smaller. And so if we can harness that in our rehab sense, then we can make much more robust just daily life, general population. We can kind of build these interventions out to really prepare them to be successful. It's grew into 2 courses now that covers everything from, I sort of talk about neuroplasticity and sort of these concepts of motor control to vestibular ocular motor interventions, as well as the cervical spine, autonomic systems, and how they pertain to rehab, again, both orthopedic and concussion. I didn't really categorize it as one on purpose because I believe that the principles are translate across the board. It kind of just grew out of, again, my passion for connecting, neuroscience and sports medicine together and helping clinicians really understand these concepts. So it doesn't seem like this, so complicated ability to do it. They think, it's like you have to be a neurotherapist or a vestibular therapist. And really you just have to understand the basic components and you can apply this stuff to the practice, like sort of the types of practice you're already doing as an orthopedic therapist, for example. And a lot of people who even treat concussion as well, integrating some of the concepts that they've learned for return to sport for orthopedic injuries and connecting that with concussion. The same principles apply in different ways, but looking at it from a lens of the sports medicine practitioner has really helped reframe it for people this year and just connect a lot of dots between like the concussion education they've had and like orthopedic education, and just sort of break down the silos between those. Of course, right when I inquired about it was kind of when NeuroTrackerX was being released. And so for me, that was a game changer in that offering because my time is limited. And I think 2020 has taught us how precious our time really is and how much we have to provide. And as a busy clinician that I'm kind of in a bunch of different roles, I needed more hybrid ways of implementing interventions and really optimizing the time for my patients to utilize it. So instead of just seeing me once a week and doing a training session, they now can do it every day or as many times a week as they can tolerate. My goal is to really sort of grow into this hybrid model, and something like NeuroTracker is being objective. I can track it through the dashboard. So I can log in, I can see what my patients are doing. I can see how often they're doing it. I can kind of prompt them if I need to. But so far adherence has been great. And I think people are really just looking for something to do as well. So it's really come at a time that has really just been optimal for everyone. I find it's really useful and also helps generate some passive revenue as well, because it's something that I can, again, do without contact time. So I can kind of be more efficient and spend my time in clinic, like assessing and progressing and reevaluating rather than spending it on like the training aspect. They can kind of do that on their own. As I mentioned, I do have a background in sports medicine, and like to optimize performance and integrating sort of this cognitive and more neurosport perspective. I'm hoping to provide sort of like a hybrid model of online sort of packages for athletes to have access to things like NeuroTracker and other cognitive pieces, and other sport specific drills that they can do at home, especially while sports are currently not really running. So to be able to keep kind of that game sense, kind of that head on a swivel, sort of, I call it, training, to be able to like see their field of play and all those pieces, because really they're not getting that exposure right now. So I think that's just as important, because going back, that's actually more of what we're seeing for preventing injury, is having athletes, I guess, like more sharp cognitively, and the ability to like make successful, quick decisions in that evolving environment, prevents them from, taking a hit that they don't see coming, especially contact sports, which is more of what I work with. But yeah, I'm hoping to kind of add it to a performance piece as well as a rehab piece. For a case where it's potentially like a long-term away from sport because of like a surgical reconstruction, or maybe it's just a few weeks off because of a pesky orthopedic injury, like a bad sprain. It's something that I think, even if without an injury, I think that an athlete can benefit from training with NeuroTracker, or even general population, like depending on kind of what I always base it around the individual and their context and their needs. So if there's someone who's constantly in like busy environments, and potentially they've, got something that's affected the way they walk, even with like a shoulder injury, people get like very protective of themselves, and they change the way they walk, they change the way they move through environments. And there can be changes in the way we perceive and we extract these like variables that I talked about. So our visual variables of speed of objects, or directions of which things are moving, or maybe it's just recognizing things. So being able to utilize attention and, be able to almost like rule out distractors. I think that's one of the pieces that NeuroTracker does really well, is there's a lot of distractors in the scene with a lot of the crowding, and even the way that they kind of bounce off the screen, the spheres, that creates a whole other a dynamic part that we can't really recreate with any other piece of technology I've seen anyways. I think there is sort of a lot to tap into there for, as I said, like orthopedic rehab, or even just performance in general. And the fact now that we can just do everything kind of remotely creates this whole opportunity to just have people doing it on their own time at home, and really optimizing their training time. For clinicians, I've been helping them see the advantages of it as well in COVID, and connecting them with this technology, and helping them also understand the fundamentals of it as well. So that idea of multifocal and dynamic attention, and sort of this cognitive piece that a lot of people are missing for return to work, especially if they've been off for a prolonged period. I think integrating a hybrid model of online and sort of in-person stuff is the future of what rehab and performance is going to be. Having the ability to like train that sort of game sense, as I mentioned, off the ice or off the field, is just, it's going to be paramount in athletic performance moving forward, because of the restrictions we have now anyways on that time. For something like NeuroTracker, you're going to constantly get this like progressive challenge to the individual or athlete you're using it with, because of the feedback. It continuously builds on that, right? So it progresses with the person as they improve. And it gives you the opportunity to interact with the person, to track it, to see how well they're doing, to see how well they're adhering to it with the user dashboard, which is totally a game changer for me as well. Because again, I can kind of touch base with clients and patients without seeing them in person, which is, like I said, it's hard to always do everything in person and wait till that time occurs. And now with this new technology, it's just opening doors, let's say virtual doors, to access, this whole other side of training. And it's so accessible for everyone that I think it's going to really be pivotal in my approach to training and performance moving forward.